Welcome to a new video from TMS Software. Today we're going to look at the new ImageZoom component, which was introduced with TMS WEB Core 1.3. First, I'd like to explain to you what the ImageZoom component actually is, because reading the component name, I really didn't know what it was. This will not be theoretical. I'll actually show you the demonstration looking at the bundled example so you can see the functionality of the component. But before we look at the bundled example in detail, I'm going to build a very small web application from scratch that will make use of the ImageZoom component, and I'll in the process explain all the properties of that component. We've all seen image galleries, and this is probably one of the most requested features from our customers that work with TMS WEB Core. They have a list of images and need means to display them, but not only display the thumbnail, which you call these tiny little images. No, they also want to offer the user interaction that you can click on the thumbnail and show the big image, and then also offer this cross in the corner to quit full screen view. Of course, keyboard shortcuts like escape are also supported. This is the TWebImageZoom example in action that is bundled with TMS WEB Core. And right now you only see all the images aligned in 4 columns. This is actually the desktop view because this application has been defined as a responsive application using the TWeb responsive grid panel. We have not offered a TWeb responsive grid panel video so far, but from looking at this video, I think it's about time to do this as well. So while you watch this, please have a look if there is a TWeb responsive grid panel video available by now. So switching from full screen to window, you see that my view still has 4 columns, and now as I resize the window and make it smaller, it switches to 3 columns, 2 columns, and to the mobile view. So I'll not only focus on the ImageZoom while explaining the example, I'll also explain a little bit how you set up the responsive design. But of course, the TWeb responsive grid panel video will be much more detailed about that component. So in addition to just looking at the images, as I said, there is the user interaction where you can click on an image and then you can click the cross in the right corner, and that will exit full screen mode. As mentioned before, looking at the comprehensive example, let's create a new web application with some sample images. I selected 2 example images. You can do the same. Just to show you how I set it up, I created 2 images. One is named ex_full, which is the full size image, and the other one is ex_thumb, which is a smaller image of the same image with the dimensions of 200 × 133 pixels. So I actually resized it to a width of 200. You have to make a decision if you want to create an image gallery. Obviously, if you want to resize every image to a certain width or a certain height, that is something you have to do on your own. But of course, the component itself supports you. If you do not know the image sizes, you have certain properties that resize the images automatically for you. Looking at our example that I just created, this is the main form. I did not change anything. I just saved the program, and I also renamed the main HTML file to index.html. So when I deploy it to a web server, this application is automatically started. And let's have a look at ImageZoom, and we see that we have the TWebImageZoom control, and this is actually resizable. So with this, you determine the size of the small image, meaning the image that is not clicked, meaning the image that is the thumbnail image. For us, this means we would have to resize it to the size of our thumbnail image, or what you can do is you simply click the auto size property. I set this to true, and now the image will automatically scale correctly. Of course, this control can be put into panel components, so you can use the responsive grid panel or a standard grid panel that has a certain number of columns and rows. However, I'm going to focus on this component for now. Looking at the properties of this component, we have the auto size as the very important property, and of course you have the obvious TMS WEB Core controls to affect the styling. And the next ones that are very important for this particular control are picture and picture zoom. The logic here is a little bit in reverse. Usually you specify the full size picture under picture and have a property which is like the thumbnail image. Here it's just the other way around. You specify the picture, which is the small picture. That's why this name has been chosen, because the picture is the one that is actually shown on screen. And the picture zoom is actually the full size, the full resolution image that you can view if you click on the thumbnail image. However, these properties put the picture into your application, meaning you have a JPEG resource of the thumbnail image and of the full-size image inside of your application if you assign it this way at design time. The much more common approach, which you will see in the example that TMS created for you, is using the URL and the URL zoom properties. Just like with picture, the URL specifies the thumbnail image and the URL zoom property specifies the full-size image. For this example, I make it easy and also to show what happens if you specify the picture and the picture zoom. Just like in the VCL, you can click the ellipsis button and load an image from your hard drive. I loaded the thumbnail image with a small resolution, click OK, and here we see, as we had set auto size to true previously, this is exactly the size of the image that we expect. And now we also have to specify the full size image. Takes a little bit longer to load, but this is the full resolution image. We click OK, and that's that. If we now run the application, we already have all the user interaction implemented. This is all taken care of by the image zoom control. Note that the URL of the application actually uses index.html. The image, the thumbnail image, is being shown, and I click on the thumbnail, and here's the full resolution image with the cross in the right upper corner. And of course, the scaling of the image is handled if you resize your window. From this example, you see how easy it is to work with image zoom controls. Of course, if you use this control in a real-life application, you will not assign pictures manually, most of the time at least. So that's the number one reason why the TMS example assigns URLs, and it assigns these URLs programmatically. Without further ado, let's look at the example. All the images that are being used are added to the project in the IMG folder, and there's always two versions of each image. So each image is in numerical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. It's a total of 12 images. And each image has either a size of 128 pixels or 1024 pixels. So these are always the full size and the thumbnail image. The major difference to the example that I've shown you is that all the zoom controls will be aligned on a web responsive grid panel. The web responsive grid panel automatically aligns all the controls it hosts according to the size of the browser window. So for example, here the status is right now for a desktop application because the size of the control is wider than 768 pixels. If you double click the control, you get all the different sizes for all the different devices. For example, a smartphone only has one column. A tablet has 2 columns and a desktop has 3 columns. Whereas the large desktop has 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So right now, if you look at here, we have got 1, 2, 3, meaning we're right now in the desktop configuration and not in the large desktop configuration. A detailed look at all these properties you'll get at the TWeb Responsive Grid Panel tutorial. There's one final piece of code missing, of course. How do the zoom controls get added to the panel? And if we look at the code of the application, you see that the onCreate event from the form is implemented and the web image zoom controls are being created dynamically. Whenever you add controls to a grid panel, you have to call its begin update and end update methods in order to indicate, hey, I'm going to make changes to the control at runtime. Of course, before you start adding controls, make sure that all the existing controls are being removed and that you do using the control collection property and the method clear. And then we hard-coded the number of images from 1 to 12, and using the URL and URL zoom properties, we are going to concatenate the name of the images. So the first image is going to be the URL img/1_128, the second 2_128. I'm sure you get the gist. We also set the width and the height of the control because we know that all the images are 128 pixels wide and 85 pixels high. All the controls that we create are being automatically freed by the TMS WEB Core framework because we create them specifying the owner as self, and thus the owner is responsible for freeing the memory. However, this does not suffice. We also have to set the parent property to the grid panel, and we also have to add a control collection to the grid panel, and the control, of course, is our WebImageZoom control, and we also initialize column and row with 0, which leads to the control automatically assigning its position. This is all the code you need to implement this model looking image gallery. It's really 12 pictures, 1, 2, 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the large desktop size, and if you go smaller, this is 3 columns, this is desktop, this is tablet, and this is mobile phone. So you see the responsiveness works, and also the images can be clicked on. These are all different image zoom controls that are being aligned on the web responsive grid panel. The image zoom control is just one of the new features of the new version of TMS WEB Core. Look at all the other tutorials if you're interested in building web applications with Delphi. Feel free to browse webtmssoftware.com for more tutorials, videos, and online demos about TMS WEB Core.